Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Woodstock Council meeting of March the 3rd. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and Section 16.6.24 of the Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. The meeting will also be broadcast on Rogers TV. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the agendas, meetings, and minutes page of the city's website. Councillors will be raising their hands in view of their webcam when moving a motion, requesting to speak, and when a vote is being taken. If a member of council is disconnected or having technical difficulties, we will take a recess in order to attempt to rectify the issue. If technical difficulties exist that prevent the meeting from continuing, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later time. If councillor needs to leave the meeting at any time, they are requested to inform the clerk. I will now ask council members to turn on their cameras, please. And the first order of business is a proclamation, and I will read this proclamation. Whereas International Women's Day has been observed since the early 1900s, and whereas annually on the 8th of March, thousands of events are held throughout the world to inspire women and celebrate economic, political, and social achievements of women past, present, and future. And whereas the Zonta Club of Woodstock works in conjunction with Zonta International in advancing the status of women worldwide. And whereas this year's theme is Best the Bias. Now, therefore, I, Acting Mayor Connie Lauder, the City of Woodstock, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, March the 8th, 2022 as International Women's Day in the City of Woodstock, dated this third day of March, 2022 at Woodstock, Ontario. We'll proceed. Is there any disclosure of conflict of interest? Hearing none. Are there any matters of new business, disclosure of new business? Are there any matters arising from the minutes? Councillor Schadenberg, would you please read the resolutions for the meetings of February the 17th, a regular council meeting, February 22nd and February 24th are budget meetings?
Yes, that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Woodstock City Council held on February 17th, 2022, and the minutes of the special revenue budget meetings held on February 22nd, 2022 and February 24th, 2022 be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot, second that motion. All in favor? Thank you. That's passed. Additions to the agenda, we have none. Presentations, the staff presentations will be entertained shortly, and we have no delegations. There's no planning reports, and there's no correspondence. As staff presentations will go forward now. I'll call on our police chief, Daryl Longworth, to present his budget.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I believe the chair was going to introduce me, perhaps.
Yes, good afternoon. I think that we all recognize that the past 12 months were basically a repeat of the previous 12 months in terms of the fact that March is now the second anniversary of the pandemic. That situation did create some adversities and challenges for your police service, but we have, both as a board and as a police service, we have soldiered on during the course of that time period. For the board, our attention has been on the pursuit of our strategic plan, and just as recently as the January meeting, we went through the strategic priorities contained in that plan and decided which ones we were working the hardest to achieve. And lo and behold, none of those priorities included the replacement of the chief. Just over a week ago, I think most of you are either seen or heard of the public announcement of Chief Longworth's pending retirement in the fall. I want to again commend the chief for what he's accomplished over the past 3 years, what will be 3 years in the fall. I think it's been quite significant to over that time period what he has actually accomplished. Speaking for the board, I could also say that we would have liked to see him stay for a further period of time. That's obviously not going to happen as retirement beckons. I do want to quash the rumor that in his retirement, he's taking up a professional career as a pickleball player. I don't think that's, we need to rolling around in the community. On the contrary, I think it's important that we would hope that he will continue to fulfill some public service in the community and in whatever capacity or capacities that he sees fit. The board does want to again commend the chief for giving us plenty of notice of his retirement. We will be giving that matter the highest priority going forward, and we hope to have some further announcements in that on that matter in the not too distant future. Now, turning to the subject of the police budget, we have, as a board, we're well aware of the growth that's happening in the city of Woodstock. There's been a number of media articles about the Woodstock's growth over the past few weeks. And I think we've prepared a budget that reflects both the growth of the city as well as what the taxpayer can, the burden the taxpayer can actually accept when it comes to the overall budget as well as the budget of the police. So I'm going to ask, turn everything over to Chief Longworth and let him go into the details of the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the kind words. I'm going to try and share my screen here and make sure everybody can see it. If somebody can just give me a thumbs up, make sure you can see the screen. We're good? Okay. So again, good afternoon, and it's my pleasure on behalf of the Woodstock Police Services Board and the dedicated members of the who make up the Woodstock Police Service to present the 2022 budget proposal. Again, before I think I do that, I know the chair alluded to our strategic plan. I think it'd be important for me to just to highlight and reflect on the performance of the budget, and then I'll in 2021, and then I'll talk about our strategic plan. So our 2021 budget saw a total of $85,000 shortfall in revenue from a number of the revenue lines that we had estimated, and those shortfalls were primarily related to the pandemic. And then we also saw nearly 100,000 in additional expenses directly related to the pandemic that went towards the purchase of PPE, renovations and furniture purchases to ensure barriers, physical distancing, and then the extra cleaning and the purchase of cleaning supplies to keep the buildings up to snuff and make sure that our public was safe and our members were safe while they were doing their duties. Well, on the positive side, we did wind up with an overall budget surplus of nearly $600,000 in 2021 that will go directly into our reserve lines. So nearly 300,000 of that is earmarked for projects that we started in 2021, but they won't be completed and we won't see the billing until 2022. So that money, that amount will go into reserves and then come right back out very soon in the near future for those projects once they're completed. So the remaining $300,000 is a result of some additional revenue that we obtained through WSIB reimbursements, more than what was anticipated. And then there was a few unanticipated personnel vacancies that either we were unable to fill, chose not to fill because we were awaiting from some reviews from the province, or we filled after a couple months of seeking a replacement. And then there was an increase in a very positive increase in the grant funding we received for our court security, more than was anticipated when we prepared the budget. And then we got some grant money obtained for an investigative position. So with the additional $300,000 going into our reserves, we did not have to budget for adding significant reserves contributions in our 2022 operating budget. And therefore, we were able to reduce the overall impacts on the 2022 budget. So looking ahead to the 22 budget, we are moving into the third and final year of our strategic plan, as the chair alluded to. So I'll take some time to review the goals that were established when this plan was put together and approved by the board 2 years ago. The first priority being to improve community safety. And there are a number of goals and targets that fall under that priority, including making our roads safer, enhancing drug enforcement, improving outcomes for victims, and having a greater focus on our downtown core. Our second priority relates to creating better collaboration and engagement with our community through improving our external communications, working with and mobilizing the community, and better engaging with our community partners, our diverse communities, youth, elderly, and our vulnerable populations. This has been a difficult task to achieve over the last couple of years when we've all been kind of locked in our doors. It's been difficult for us to get out and engage the community. So we've had to be creative, and we've done a lot more online presentations, a lot more online interactions with the community. But unfortunately, I think it's an area we didn't quite, we've struggled with trying to achieve where we wanted to be. I'm hopeful and optimistic in this third and final year. And as we move forward, we'll be able to better get out in the community and attack that priority a little more aggressively. And then finally, enhancing organizational excellence by leveraging technology to make the more efficient use of our resources, looking after our members' mental and physical wellness, and enhancing our performance management and career development, and overall just making sure our members are looked after so that they can go and look after the community. So I guess the question is, are we well positioned to address these priorities now and into the future? This budget and the previous two budgets I presented are designed or have been designed to ensure that we continue to be well positioned to address these priorities now and also into the future. So you can see we continue to see growth in our calls for service. Calls for service spiked, up between 2018 to 2019, and then they kind of leveled off for 2020. And I think that was a huge result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But then as we go into 2022 or 2021, we see that growth trend is continuing, and we handled 3,400 more calls in 2021 than we did in 2020. And if we just picked a ballpark average that it took, let's say, an hour for each officer to attend on each one of those calls, that's an additional 3,400 hours that we spent on the additional calls for service. That's the equivalent of about 1.6 full-time officers. I can tell you we're not unique. Police services across Ontario are seeing similar trends in the demands for service. And if you look going way back to 2015, we've seen a 43% increase in our calls for service over that period of time. So what types of calls are we seeing the most significant increases in? And I've highlighted a few here on the chart for you. The number of weapons-related calls we saw rise considerably in 2020. You see that jump from 2019 to 2020, continued into 2021. And although it's not as high as 2020, it's significantly higher than the 25 average of around 25 we saw going back as far as 2016. The unwanted person calls, the weapons calls, assaults, suicides and attempt suicides, and frauds that I have on the chart here are all calls that take a significant amount of time to complete, and they've been increasing. I do want you to remember that increase in the weapons calls over the past 2 years, as I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes at a future slide. But another disturbing trend is, and it's occurring not just in Woodstock, but across the country, is the increase in the number of overdose deaths and the number of overdose in entirety. We attended 116 overdose calls last year, and our officers administered a total of 103 doses of naloxone. Unfortunately, 17 of those overdose calls resulted in deaths, and that's up from 6 in 2020 and 5 the year previous to that. Back in the fall of 2020, the direction we received from the Ministry Solicitor General requires us to treat all drug overdose deaths as suspicious. So in essence, we treat them like a potential homicide, and we direct a significant amount of resources to those. And as a result, in 2020, I believe we laid one charge related to manslaughter for the death of a person. And I believe we had 3 in 2021. So there was some good reasons why the ministry had requested us to do those investigations. But if you look at the increase in the volume, the amount of time it takes to investigate those has increased. And it's not just the volume that's increasing because of that new directive, it's the complexity and the time and the amount of resources we have to put on those types of calls as well. I will tell you on a positive note, and this is the second time I've been able to report on this, we have seen a significant reduction in the number of mental health calls we're responding to, which, although that's just 2 years of data, that's 2 years in a row we've seen this, it may be indicative that we're starting to see some positive outcomes from the use of our MHeart teams, our Health IM software, and the ongoing mental health training we've been providing. And I think that's proof positive that by having the appropriate agency and not the police dealing with social determinants of health and some of these other social and health issues, that positive outcomes may result and things can improve. So here you can see the number of arrests we made in 2020 compared to the arrests made in 2021. So we made 1,596 arrests in 2021 compared to the 749 in 2020. So that's more than doubled. Again, each arrest takes an officer off the road for anywhere from, let's say, 2 to 6 hours, depending on the nature of the arrest, in order to complete the arrest, transport that individual back to the station, booking the individual, facilitating a lawyer, and completing the necessary paperwork. And if we just settled on a conservative estimate of 3 hours per arrest, the increase in the arrests alone equates to 2,541 additional hours spent in 2021 over 2020. And that's the equivalent of 1.2 full-time officers. And that doesn't even factor in the follow-up required to process those charges through the courts that sometimes take up to a year. So we know that the population is growing. We've seen the latest StatsCan census data. Woodstock is one of the fastest growing communities in southwestern Ontario, as well as the rest of Ontario. The provincial rate of growth average is 5.8%, and the national growth rate average sits at 5.2%. The growth rate in the population of Woodstock represents 13.6% increase since the last census taken in 2016. So on this chart, you can see that the blue line continues to increase, which is our population. And it continues to increase at the same rate as our calls for service, which is the red line. And I took this population's estimates, obviously, from the most recent census. So again, we had 27,158 calls for service in 2021. The green line represents the linear path or trajectory that our calls for service is taking as we proceed into 2022, which will continue to trend upwards on the same trajectory as our population growth. So to answer the question I posed a few minutes ago, are we well positioned to address our 3 strategic priorities now? I would say the answer is yes. We have increased staffing on our sworn complement by 11 sworn officers over the past 24 months. I should also point out that, in my opinion, we were severely understaffed 24 months ago when it came to you starting to look at increasing the number of officers we had. We've also restructured a little bit in order to take 2 officers who had previously been assigned to more administrative duties and reassign them to frontline response or investigative duties. The increases to staffing that we made in 2020 and again in 2021 established a much needed base from which to grow. Unfortunately, even with that growth, there have been many times this past year where our staffing levels have not been able to meet the demand. And I know some of you have even called me and asked why sometimes it's taking our officers several hours to get to a call. But often between our peak periods of 11 a.m. to maybe 1 a.m. in the morning, every officer in the city is tied up on calls with several other calls waiting in the queue. And this has meant that our response times for some lower priority calls has been delayed. It also means that our officers don't have time for proactive patrols sometimes, the community engagement that we want them to achieve, or traffic initiatives in the areas where our community are requesting and demanding traffic enforcement. So the service needs to continue to keep pace with the growing and changing demographics, the increasing calls for service, and the increasingly more complex crimes and investigations. like the very time-consuming investigations of the drug overdose deaths that I mentioned previously. So what has been the return on the investment you've made over the past 2 years? The investments over the past 2 years have allowed us to dedicate 2 dedicated full-time patrol officers downtown, assign 1 full-time dedicated traffic officer, allowed us to restructure on how we deploy our K9 officer that allows him to now spend 50% of his time conducting traffic enforcement. We've added 1 additional officer dedicated to drug investigations. We created the community response unit, staffed with 2 officers, 2 constables, and a sergeant to proactively target hotspot crime locations, issues downtown, and traffic initiatives. The creation of a special victims unit with 2 constables to target intimate partner violence and human trafficking. And to supplement staffing for the loss of 8 officers off on long-term WSIB related injuries. Radar charges are up 49% since 2019. Criminal code charges are up slightly, 3%, and our drug charges are up 53%. And those are meaningful drug charges. The charges you see here are those for drug trafficking, possession for the purpose of the trafficking, and they're related to people bringing drugs into the city. We rarely lay charges for simple possession anymore. And again, with each charge comes additional paperwork and additional time spent in court down the road. Last year, our drug unit took over 50,000 street level doses of fentanyl off the street. They took over 21,000 doses of meth off the street. They also seized 22 replica firearms, 11 real firearms, 2 of which were loaded and on the accused at the time of their arrest, and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, all during their drug investigations. The increase in the number of firearms being seized over the past 2 years is very concerning, and it's a concerning trend. And I don't want anyone to dismiss the fact that the 22 of the 33 firearms that were seized during the drug investigations last year were replicas. Make no mistake, these are weapons being used on the street as real weapons, as real firearms during drug transactions, in robberies, during home invasions, and other violent crimes. As indicated in the rise of the number of the weapons calls that I told you to remember a couple slides back, it's these types of firearms and these replica firearms that's driving these weapons related calls and the numbers going up higher. So again, are we well positioned now? Yes, but we need to continue to build on that solid base that has been established and increase staffing levels and technology to keep pace with the growing community and increasing workload into the future. So what are some of the impacts affecting the 22 budget? There's going to be further reductions in revenues still anticipated, and we've tried to allow for those in the 22 budget because of the pandemic continuing, or the after effects of the pandemic. Leveraging technology. I've mentioned before that continuing to add very expensive human resources is just not sustainable. We can't keep going at this rate. We have to continue to keep expanding our technological capabilities so that we can work smarter and make more efficient use of the valuable resources that we're putting out on the street every single day. So this budget will allow us to do that through continuing our investment into digital evidence management, which diminishes the time officers spend handling and redacting the volumes and what's becoming an ever increasing volume of digital evidence we're receiving during investigations. In preparation for court, making use of cloud-based technology to provide seamless disclosure of digital evidence to the courts, and eliminating the need for costly storage servers and time-consuming process of sending officers to pick up video or burning images to disk and other storage devices. We've already seen the benefits of some of these technical advancements we've already made over the past couple of years. So far, the resulting efficiencies have freed up an estimated 35 to 40 hours per week for some of our civilian staff. This has allowed us to restructure and redistribute workload in order to create an additional civilian position this year with no additional impact on the budget. Improvements to our computer-aided dispatch system and business analytics software has allowed us to identify where we need to put our officers and where they need to be there. We have identified an increasing workload in our 911 communication center. So the enhancements we plan to make to our phone system and computer-aided dispatch will diminish the amount of time that our communicators spend on the phone or on the radio with our officers, and put more information at the fingertips of our officers in the field through their mobile terminals and their handheld devices. By making continued investments to our business analytics software will allow us to leverage the data that we have available to us to set priorities, develop policies, and assist in our decision-making to make sure we're making the best use of our resources, putting our officers where they need to be and when they need to be there. And Next Generation 911, or NG 911, which I've talked to you about before here, is an initiative aimed at updating the 911 service across North America to improve public emergency communication services in an increasingly wireless mobile society. And this is something we have no choice over. If we want to operate a 911 center here, we have to make these improvements. And we have made significant investments back in 2020 and again in 2021. This budget has budgeted for some further enhancements in 22, and then we'll have to do some more in 2023. And to prepare for the regulated standards that are mandated by the CRTC and that will come into full effect and full force. And we have to have this done by 2024. Other impacts affecting the budget, contractual salary increases, obviously. And when you consider that about 91% of our budget goes towards human resources, this is a significant driver. As is our increasing insurance and WSIB costs. Our insurance costs alone increased 15% over 2021. And finally, increasing our staffing levels. This budget will make significant investments in our staffing levels in 2022. It will allow us to hire 4 additional officers. We've tried to offset the rising costs of these additional hires with savings we've identified in other areas of the budget. And the intention of these additional officers is to have them all assigned to frontline patrol, 1 per platoon, for priority response in order to allow for improved response times, additional proactive patrol time in the city, more proactive foot patrol downtown and in our parks and trails, and to have better capacity to staff patrol zones. As we anticipate an analysis and a potential restructuring of patrol zones in the city to potentially add a 7th patrol zone in the north end of the city to adapt to the influx of residential growth in that area. And as I had mentioned previously, some workload analyses conducted along with some of the technology advancements in 2021 have resulted in some efficiencies in our civilian positions. And this has allowed us to restructure, redistribute work, and create a much needed civilian communications supervisor position in 2022 at no additional cost implication on this budget. So this proposed budget will allow us to make significant improvements in 2022. By adding an additional frontline officer to each platoon, we'll have additional resources assigned to traffic enforcement. That's in addition to the full-time traffic member added in 2020 and the restructuring of our K9 unit, who now dedicates 50% of his time to traffic enforcement. Strategic targeted enforcement throughout the city and additional patrols and enforcement efforts downtown. That's in addition to the 2 foot patrol officers already assigned. I have not asked for any additional officers to be deployed downtown on a full-time basis. As I've stated previously, research shows that ticketing and arresting and charging these individuals is ineffective, and it's not a solution to the problems presently being experienced downtown. However, I do believe that by having additional officers assigned to each platoon, we can provide and supplement what we have downtown with the full-time officers and add additional visibility downtown, which I think when combined with the enhanced bylaw officer presence being proposed, will impact on people's perception of the safety in the downtown core. And I've already touched on the increased technology improvements and the impact they will have on the workload in our dispatch center and on our ability to more efficiently deploy our people. So this investment is critical it's a critical step to ensure that we're well positioned to meet the safety needs of our diverse, vibrant, and growing community and provide effective and efficient policing into the future. So the final numbers, our projected net operating budget for 2022 is $17,508,090. This increase is a total increase of 3.1% over 2021. The board had originally approved an increase of 3.8% back in the fall, but we have continued to work on the budget over the past 3 months to get that increase down to the 3.1% increase I'm presenting today. This increase is not insignificant, and I do acknowledge that this will have an impact on property taxes during a time that is very difficult for a lot of families and a lot of businesses. I take the fiscal responsibility and accountability part of my job very seriously. But another part of my job is the safety and security of everyone in the city. And I also take that part of my job very seriously. And I believe that the funding requested will allow me to continue to do that. This city is growing, and your police service needs to grow with it in order to continue to provide that effective and efficient policing, just not only now, but into the future. Before I close, I would like to acknowledge the members of the Woodstock Police Service who go out there every day and are out there right now. They're answering the 911 calls and dealing with people in need, people in crisis, responding to emergencies. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions through to the chief from our council members? Can we just take Councillor Schadenberg?
And maybe this is a technology question from our chair, acting Mayor Lauder, through to our police chief. I saw a TV news story that talked about a 3-word 911 system, where if you said something like black, yellow, brown, that would geographically put your GIS coordinates right to the exact situation or location where the incident was occurring. Is there something like that occurring in the city of Woodstock for a technological advance, or what can be said about technology like that?
Not right now, but we are exploring it. I believe York has recently introduced it, and another police service we were reading about had done that recently as well. It is something we're exploring. I don't think there's significant costs attached with it. I think it's an app that we can subscribe to and make available to the community. So it's something we're exploring as well, yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Talbot?
Thank you, Chair, through to the chief. What were your, I'm just looking at what we had in our budget line for you. So the numbers that were put in for 2021 were both, and the year to date were exactly the same. Do you know what your actual numbers were? Like I have 16,981,626. Would you happen to have what your actual year to date for 2021 was?
I do. I can, so I just asked finance for that yesterday. I'll have to check another sheet because she's already put the reserve contributions.
That's fine. You can send it to me. I was just curious because when I pulled up our budget, I just happened to know that both numbers were the same. And I mean, they had you at a higher increase than what you stated. So I'm just curious as to what the actual numbers were, but
right.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Aggioni?
Thank you. Through the chair to the chief. Really just want to say a big thank you. I know it's a real tough job. I want to say thanks on a personal level because you guys have always been there. When we ask you questions, you're always quick to respond. And I know I feel very strongly that you really do care about our community and are doing what's best and with budgeting and everything else. So to you and your staff, I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you also to you, Chief Longworth. Just thanks for your years of service with the city, and I'm wishing you a happy retirement, and it's a well-deserved retirement. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
So now we will move on to the next delegation is Mary Reed, Director Curator of the Woodstock Art Gallery, and Martha Gingrich. Go ahead, Martha.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, City Council, and members of the audience. My name is Martha Gingrich, and I'm Chair of the Woodstock Art Gallery's Advisory Board. Along with Mary Reid, WAG Director Curator, we will be presenting the gallery's 2021 operations year in review and the WAG's plans for moving forward in 2022 and beyond. As for many cultural organizations, 2021 was yet another difficult year, but we did achieve a number of successes, and I plan to share with you today. I would like to start with acknowledging some changes to the WAG board's membership. As you see, I'm newly elected board chair. Lynn Moyer has now moved to the position of past chair. And on behalf of the gallery board and staff, we would like to acknowledge the steadfast and conscientious guidance she provided to the gallery over the last year. During 2021, the advisory board undertook the development of an investment fund earnings dispersal policy, which was tied to the report you will be considering later in this meeting. We are pleased to welcome engineer Aaron Dawson to our ranks. His expertise in design and project management will be a much needed asset to the gallery's future growth, and in particular, the area of public art. At the end of 2021, we had 3 board members step down: David Hinderley, Brian Hadley, and Jay Heeman. David Hinderley was part of the original city-appointed board and played a key role in the gallery's fundraising committee. Brian Hadley joined the board in 2014 and was a guiding leader and mentor through his positions on the executive and nominating committee, as well as the chair of the collections committee. Jay Heeman gave his resignation from the board due to his need to focus on other pressing issues that require his time and commitment. On behalf of the Woodstock Art Gallery, I would like to acknowledge and thank David, Brian, and Jay for their dedicated service and commitment towards the importance of the visual arts in daily life. And of course, the board's biggest accomplishment for 2021 was the development of the gallery's 2021 to 2026 strategic plan. This was recently presented and very receptively received by City Council. The board's fundraising committee was also very busy in 2021 to leverage the establishment of the gallery's investment fund, which was made possible by the generous and substantial bequest by the late R. Bruce Flowers. The committee developed a planned giving strategy. This included the creation of the pamphlets you see on the right that were then distributed to local funeral homes in the county. The committee also implemented a more responsive means to acknowledge donors through a dynamic projection display, which will be revealed in the coming months in the main foyer. Marking the gallery's 10th year in the historic John White building, the committee set a goal of raising $10,000 in individual donations in 2021. This was in tandem with an exhibition showcasing the building's rich history in the Dr. Leonard Reeves Permanent Collections Gallery. I'm delighted to report that this $10,000 goal was far surpassed, hitting over $17,000. This was due to a very successful end-of-year Giving Tuesday campaign. The chart here shows how the gallery's annual donation totals have increased over the past 10 years. The spike you see in 2014 was donations in the memory of some key gallery supporters, including Lois Jones and Bob McFarland. I want to thank our community who answered our call during this difficult time. This type of contribution truly demonstrates the tremendous support for the galleries in Woodstock and beyond. I also want to acknowledge the efforts of the city's Treasury Department for their timely turnaround in tax receipts during what is a very busy year-end tax cycle. Thank you for your time and attention. I will now turn over to Mary Reid, the gallery's director curator, who will go into more detail regarding 2021's achievements and the exciting plans for 2022.
Thank you very much, Martha. As you're all aware, we started 2021 in lockdown measures and being able to open towards the end of February, only to have to close again in April. The Education Department, which consists of Stephanie Porter, Head of Education, and Deanna Logan, Education Coordinator, have been doing much of the heavy lifting to ensure that the gallery is still a very vital part of contributing to the overall well-being of the City of Woodstock. Due to the support of the Toyota Motor Manufacturing of Canada, we were able to offer 2 art grab giveaways via curbside pickup last year. People were lined up around the block to receive these little magical bags of creative fun. And given the success of last year, Toyota generously donated another $10,000 to the gallery. And we gave another recent giveaway of these wonderful little bags at our recent Family Day weekend just this past February. With the success of the art grab bags brought several community partners seeking to collaborate with the gallery, one of which is our very own Woodstock Public Library, who launched the Art of Stories in the summer of 2021. And the gallery provided 60 art bags for the library to be able to give away free to their clients. And following the partnership with the Children's Aid Society initiated in 2020, the gallery continued to develop our community creation kits. 4 kits were launched throughout 2021, with 120 being distributed directly to CAS clients. And I want to thank our community sponsors, including the Oxford Community Foundation, RBC, and the Insurance Store. 2021 brought much more confidence and experience in the face of virtual programming. And all of our little art grab bags and very substantial community creation kits were tied to the gallery's website and rich virtual resources. And one of the most popular virtual resources are these puzzles that are created with works from our permanent collection. In 2021, 11 puzzles were created and played several times. And the most popular is being this work that you see here by local Woodstock artist, John Harvey. Another exciting virtual program that was launched in 2021 was the high school juried exhibition, New Impressions. And this project was generously sponsored by DJ Design and Heart FM. The virtual celebration and award ceremony attracted over 400 viewers. And later in the year, the gallery was shortlisted for a provincial-wide art education award through Galleries Ontario for this special program. But the kids weren't just having all the fun. The gallery's education team also created engaging virtual programs for adults. These included a 10-week business accelerator workshop for creatives in partnership with the Small Business Center, piloting a virtual team building workshop, and delivering 3 webinars which featured curatorial and artist talks offered in partnership with the Fine Art Department at Fanshawe College, and each averaging about 300 views. And the gallery is certainly very, very proud of our very own head of education, Stephanie Porter, who received the Jack Ross Memorial Award this year. This award celebrates the efforts of individuals who make an outstanding contribution to the lives of children and families in Oxford County from the Children's Aid Society. On behalf of the gallery staff and board, I want to take this opportunity to sincerely congratulate Stephanie on receiving this extremely well-deserved award and going above and beyond for improving the lives of children and families in this community. With the exhibition schedule changing almost every few weeks, it seemed like, due to the provincial-wide closures, I made the decision to double down on the local. That meant the gallery's most important community resource, the permanent collection, took center stage. And 143 works from the collection were featured in thematic exhibitions throughout 2021. And with the exceptions of 2 pre-booked touring exhibitions that could not be moved, the balance of the gallery's schedule was dedicated to highlighting local talent. And I want to thank my colleagues at the Woodstock Museum, in particular, Adam Pollard, Curator of Collections, for partnering with the gallery to host the Grand National Fiber Art Exhibition, Crossroads, that allowed us to be able to host our very popular and much anticipated annual juried exhibition. 59 works made their way into the permanent collection last year, with 3 successful applications made to the Canadian Cultural Property Review Board due to the efforts of Nell Wheel, our head of collections. And I want to make special mention of the painting that you see here on the screen in the upper left-hand corner. It is titled The Grandmothers, and this is created by Indigenous artist and Woodstock-born Lee Claremont. In line with the gallery's commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion, I'm pleased to note that over half the works brought into the collection last year were by women or Indigenous artists. And as a means of keeping the collection accessible, we've switched over to a newer, more dynamic database system in partnership with the museum. Another key pillar of the gallery's new strategic plan is public engagement. And the rebranding process was a very successful activity led by Robin DeAngelis, Cultural Communications Coordinator. We received 500 survey responses, and local Interkip graphic designer Andrea DeBoer was selected. The new logo uses the letter W, and the shape and interconnected letters symbolize the Woodstock community that the Woodstock Art Gallery enriches, serves, and inspires. And not to be deterred by COVID, the gallery reimagined its signature fundraiser, this time now a taste of art in a box. This was paired with our virtual opening celebrations for the fall of 2021. And I want to thank Investment Planning Council and Heart FM for their support of this very successful initiative. In addition to all of the COVID health and safety protocols that the gallery put in place, there were also a number of important facility upgrades. Under the project management of Kellen Hodgins facility maintenance, the flooring on the gallery's third floor was replaced with much more durable vinyl plank. And more significantly, a new roof was finally installed, which was a very, very large project involving many trades. And I want to extend my thanks to Craig Wallace, Manager of Building and Facilities, for his assistance in this much needed upgrade. A silver lining to COVID is that the majority of the gallery staff and board have been able to participate in significant amount of professional development. Of note is Sarah Cuthbert, our gallery's operations coordinator, who undertook a few substantial workshops, including Galleries Ontario's Data Shy to Data Driven program, with a goal to enhance our digital strategies and data-driven decision-making. In addition, Sarah also participated in a number of webinars dedicated to membership programs, which will assist us in overhauling the gallery's membership program in 2022. I've already mentioned a number of my fantastic team members, but I'd like to make special mention of our students and interns who assisted us in 2021. Mayo Yu Tung, Maya Allison, Vicki Lin, Julia DeQuant, and Riley Knowles have provided exceptional help as we've navigated through COVID. All of these positions are funded through youth employment grant programs through the Government of Canada. And the gallery prides ourselves in being able to provide meaningful job training that aids these young people in developing their problem-solving skills and communication skills, assisting them in becoming cultural leaders of tomorrow. And I would be remiss in not mentioning the gallery's involvement in the Santa Claus Parade. This was by far a career highlight for myself personally. I certainly felt like I was in a Hallmark Christmas movie. And Acting Mayor Connie Lauder is our very own energized elf as she ran alongside of us. The gallery staff prepared and handed out over 1,000 baggies of art supplies, and we prepared special resources on our website to ensure that even though we were closed to the public, we were still very much connected to our community. Looking ahead to 2022, due to 2 successful grant applications to the New Horizons for Seniors and Ontario Seniors Grant Program, the gallery's education team is now in the process of developing a digital tour app guide. This app provides viewers with access to additional text and media content pertaining to the artwork that they're viewing in the gallery. They can also take advantage of this app in the comfort of their own home. And this educational tool is a very exciting avenue and holds endless potential in supporting future educational programming. And of course, I have to mention the naming of the Florence Carlisle Park in 2021 and the launch of the city's first public art commission made possible by the late artist and educator, Bruce Flowers. Also of note is the Woodstock Art Gallery organized and traveling exhibition, Many Lives Mark This Place. John Hartman paints Canadian writers in the landscapes that inspire them. This exhibition was placed on hiatus in 2021 and has recently opened again in 2 parts. Part 1 is on view at the Woodstock Art Gallery, and part 2 is currently on view at the Confederation Art Center Gallery in Charlottetown, PEI. Things to highlight in the 2022 revenue budget that are on the positive side is that the gallery received a number of grants in 2020 and 2021 that cannot be expended, and as such, these amounts are already secured and have been carried over to 2022. This is particularly the case regarding the John Hartman traveling exhibition. We received 2 very large grants from the Department of Canadian Heritage, $94,000 for COVID-19 relief and $33,000 for the creation of a digitization strategy for the permanent collection. And then, of course, there's the transfer of approved funds from the 2021 budget, as well as the use of reserve funds to smooth out the costs of the program delivery. On the downside, the gallery's ability to self-generate revenue has been severely compromised in the last 2 years, effectively collapsing some activities altogether, in particular the bus tour and the film series. The estimates provided in the 2022 budget are based on reduced participation rates, but we're hopefully optimistic that in the coming months, as restrictions are lifted, these conservative estimates will in fact be succeeded. And I'd like to draw your attention to a few areas on the expense side. Given the grant we received from the Department of Canadian Heritage, I'm using a portion of these funds to bring up some budget lines to pre-COVID levels. The first one is regarding new equipment. We purchased a commercial grade dishwasher due to COVID that will assist us in providing safe snack breaks to our little art campers. As a means to address the gallery's strategic priority of equity, diversity, and inclusion, the gallery has become an institutional member of the Indigenous Curatorial Collective. And in turn, they have shared with us some excellent resources to help us on our DEI journey. The gallery's professional development line has been turned to the 2020 level, anticipating travel associated with these opportunities. And due to our new logo, a number of pieces of signage need to be redesigned and reprinted. And in tandem, we're hoping to produce a whole new line of merchandise that highlights the gallery's new logo. And the greatest increase is in the budget line that's dedicated to special projects. This is both for the tour guide app and the digitization of the collection, and both that are tied to grant funds that I've mentioned have already been confirmed. The collections budget has not been increased in over 8 years, and as such, with the implementation of the new database and this new digitization activity, this budget line has been modestly increased. And one of the areas that has been significantly reduced to COVID was the exhibition schedule. And this budget line has been increased back closer to pre-COVID levels, but is also reflective of the John Hartman traveling exhibition. And then, of course, I'm ever hopeful that we'll be able to host receptions for our exhibitions come this summer and fall. All in all, it's been a very productive year despite the circumstances. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to my extraordinarily dedicated staff, as well as to several colleagues in the city. I'm very grateful to the gallery's advisory board for expertly guiding and overseeing the gallery's operations. To conclude this presentation, I want to leave you with a small selection of comments we received from our supporters over the last year. Keywords such as stand strong, hard work, dedication, passion, and drive speaks to the Woodstock Art Gallery's importance to the citizens of Woodstock. And lastly, I want to thank City Council for the steadfast support that you've provided to the gallery and to myself over 2021. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mary, for your report. And are there any questions or comments for Mary? Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, thanks a lot. From our acting mayor through to Mary Reid. First of all, congratulations on the work you have done in the recent years, and the fact that you really seem to cover everything from, say, 5-year-olds up to 95-year-olds, and you've got all the bases covered in between. One thing I really liked is your collection of exhibitions. They have 143 permanent collection works featured in exhibitions at the Woodstock Art Gallery. I think that's very important because if you make the investment to create a collection locally, it really doesn't make sense to keep them all in an air-conditioned warehouse, does it? It's to get them on the walls, let people see them, and then let them be part of a touring exhibition around the province of Ontario to move forward. So I congratulate you on your ongoing efforts in that direction too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Accioni?
Yes, through the chair to Mary, as always, thank you. Big supporter. You know that you've kind of converted me per se to the art gallery, of course. But big question here I have for you, and you know what's coming. When's the Taste of Art this year? And I hope it's a live event.
Well, through to our acting mayor to the councillor's question, we do try to always host it in September. So if you have a crystal ball, Councillor Accioni, and you can let me know if it's safe to do so. If not, we are going to be moving forward with the Taste of Art in the Box again and try to do a virtual celebration. But we're not going to let go of that signature fundraiser. So don't you worry, it will be back in some form, but thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mary, and I just wanted to thank you for all the professionalism that you bring to our city. Thanks for this presentation that you've made.
Thank you very much.
Now I'll call on David Harvey, Chief Executive Officer with the Woodstock Public Library, and Ken Whiteford, Chair of the Woodstock Public Library, for the 22 budget presentation.
Good afternoon again. I'd like to begin by recognizing the staff of the library and the way that they've continued to handle the vagaries of the pandemic. It was another yo-yo year in terms of delivery of service, with periods of curbside service, followed by the browse, borrow, and go model that in a kind of an intermittent cycle during the course of the year. From the standpoint of the board, staff have risen to the challenge, and library patrons have been well served. Your library board has also experienced some change over the course of the past 12 months. Vice Chair Ross Jerry passed away in mid-March, and his passing was duly recognized by the board. Council chose to appoint Brian Crockett to the board, and Brian had his first meeting in June. Brian has made a smooth transition as a board member. He did have the advantage of spending 8 years on the board back starting in 2004, and during those years also spent some time as chair of the board. As a reminder, the other members of the board are the vice chair, Mary Ann Silverthorne, Gary Wade, Councillor Tate, acting Mayor Lauder, and the mayor. One of the key decisions of the board in the past 12 months was our decision to go fine-free service, provide fine-free service. This is a trend that's being experienced in a lot of libraries across North America. And yes, there will be some reduced revenues in making that decision, but the research shows that charging fines for books, overdue books, simply does not work. In 2022, the board will continue to preserve or persevere in achieving the objectives of the current 5-year strategic plan. Some of those objectives have been compromised by the pandemic's effects. On the subject of the 2022 budget, the board is once again bringing forth a status quo budget, while at the same time recognizing that our collective bargaining with our staff is not completed. And we also need to address the balance of full and part-time librarians. I'll now ask David Harvey, our CEO, to summarize the 2022 budget in more detail. David will also elaborate on the surprise of the past year, that book reading, whether hardcover or paper, is far from meeting its demise, and the reason why. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Acting Mayor Lauder and members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to briefly review the year that was, 2021, at the library, and then discuss our budget request ask for this year, 2022, and then end by looking at our focuses for the year of 2022. So, despite the ongoing pandemic, the Woodstock Public Library has successfully provided library services to the community last year. The library worked within provincial health restrictions to ensure that the library is a safe place for our patrons and staff. The library has pivoted on its services 4 times last year. The library started in the year 2021 providing curbside pickup service, and then reopened to the public with our browse, borrow, and go service on February 23rd. The library returned to curbside service on April 1st and reopened once again to the public on July 5th in accordance with provincial restrictions. Despite these changes in service during the year, there were approximately 1.5 million library uses, which was slightly higher than 2020. There were 245,933 items borrowed, and 86,704 visits were made to the library last year, even though the library operated a curbside pickup service for about 5 months of last year. Pre-pandemic numbers would usually see the library at 1.9 million uses and about 330 visits per year. So that kind of gives you an idea of the impact of the pandemic on the library. And we would usually double we almost circulate double what we did in 2021 as in normal pre-COVID years. So we saw a return to our pre-pandemic visits to our website in 2021, which was up 46,000 visits from the previous year of 2020. Social media engagements continued to increase in 2021 and exceeded pre-pandemic numbers that we experienced in 2019. When I talk about media, social media, I mean our Facebook accounts, our Pinterest, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. Our virtual programming remained strong, and attendance increased by 5,000 attendees from the previous year. The uses of our digital collections has grown slowly over the years, with a noticeable jump of 25% in the first year of the pandemic. Surprisingly, though, there was a 34% decline in the use of our digital collections in 2021. So we believe that this was due to screen fatigue that was brought on by the pandemic, with everyone doing homeschooling and working from home. So we strongly believe that physical books still remain in demand by our patrons here in Woodstock. So highlights for our activities in 21 include the development and implementation of a diversity and inclusion plan and action plan for the library, the creation of a service delivery plan to help focus our activities, and in the fall, excuse me, the library migrated its bibliographic records to the Ontario Library Consortium, also known as the OLC Union database, as a cost-saving measure. So the migration to the OLC Union database allowed the library to acquire BiblioCore, which is a discovery layer for our library catalog. The BiblioCore provides advanced searching features, reader's advisory, Web 2.0 capabilities, and provides for community building around our library collection. Like a growing majority of public libraries in North America, the library went fine-free in June 2021. Studies have demonstrated that overdue fines don't work and penalize the most vulnerable in our society. Going fine-free demonstrates the board's commitment to achieving inclusiveness and social equity. Now, while overdue fines may be gone, lost and damaged fees are still in place. As always, we just want our stuff back. Another highlight for last year was that with the assistance of City IT, the library installed new VoIP telephones and successfully migrated library staff to Microsoft Office 365. The library introduced 2 new digital services in 2021 that included Creative Bug, a collection of video crafts classes, and Flipster electronic magazine. As the board chair has mentioned earlier on, the library board has requested a kind of a status quo budget for 2022 with one staffing request. So a number of assumptions guided the library's thinking in the formulation of this year's budget. Based on past experience, the library can expect the following: a continued gradual reduction of pandemic restrictions, more possible closures of the building and a return to curbside service. That already happened in the beginning of the year. We will see a reduction in revenues, such as photocopying, room rentals, and donations. There will be a slow recovery of the publishing and printing industry. There will be a return to a new normal in library service by hopefully mid-year. And that there is a pent-up demand for in-person library services and programs. Given all these uncertainties surrounding the impact of COVID-19 on library services, it was felt prudent to proceed in a cautious and conservative manner. The library board approved a status quo budget request for 2022 that included, of course, one staffing increase request. So there are three main drivers for this year's budget request, those being, of course, COVID-19 related costs, collective bargaining, and an increased staffing request, which is a part-time librarian to a full-time librarian. As you can imagine, COVID-19 related costs and savings are once again evident in our budget. So there was ongoing purchase of PPE for staff, cleaning supplies, HVAC filters for our building. But also we're saving on travel and attendance at conferences and programming supplies because we're not doing in-person programming currently. Collective bargaining. So the library began collective bargaining in late 2021 and has yet to reach an agreement. Our last agreement with our union expired at the end of 2020. So we're in our second year without a collective agreement. City HR is negotiating on behalf of the library board. And once the settlement has been reached, the library board will request permission from City Council to access library reserves. As mentioned a couple times, I guess, we're going to ask for one upgraded librarian position. So this will be in the order of about $30,000 added onto the budget. So libraries are currently in demand. And in 2021, the library lost 6 part-time librarians to full-time positions at other public libraries. Due to the position vacancies, staff vacations, and other staff leaves, the library on several occasions last year was unable to provide full service levels due to the lack of librarians. The current staffing model is simply not sustainable. So we typically invest 58 hours to recruit and train a new librarian at an estimated cost of about $3,000 each. So in order to begin to address this chronic situation, we propose to convert one part-time librarian position into a full-time position in order to provide a consistent and reliable service level. So the library budget, of course, appears on pages 95 and 97 of the city's budget booklet. And these are the bottom line numbers. Total 2022 expenditures, $2,881,900. Total 2022 revenues expected at $242,950 for a total net expenditure in 2022 of $2,638,950. And this once again represents a 1.95 increase over the previous year. So our focus going forward in 2022 will be to will be to return to normalized library services in a post-COVID world. What that will look like, how will that be different? We don't know, but we're going to find out. We will complete any outstanding approved capital projects from previous years. We have some outstanding projects such as a teen space, new security gates, and carpeting for the children's area, for example. And of course, we will complete our computer upgrades as per the cycle replacement schedule. We will carry out our diversity and inclusion action plan. We will achieve a collective agreement with the library union, and we will continue with our pay equity review. Lastly, given that this last term of the library board, the board will be preparing a legacy document for the next board. That concludes my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your report. Are there any questions through to Councillor Schadenberg? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks a lot. From the chair through to Mr. Harvey. I guess the question would be a simple one is what's the current non-resident fee, I guess is what it's called, the non-resident fee for people coming in from, say, Ingersoll or outside of the city of Woodstock to use the library?
That was just through Madam Acting Mayor to the councillor. Thank you for the question, councillor. That was just reviewed by the library board this year or last year, I believe. And I believe it's $50 or $60, but I would have to look that up. There was a slight increase over the previous period. Once again, it's about 50 or 60 bucks.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, thank you, David, for the presentation, and thanks to your staff who have dealt with the demands of the COVID and had to endure during this pandemic. So thanks to all.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to, there's no mayor's report, no councillor's report, and the department head reports. The administrative services, the expenses not included in the 2022 preliminary revenue fund budget. Could I have Councillor Talbot and Councillor Tate?
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the report regarding expenses not included in the 2022 preliminary revenue fund budget.
Thank you. Is there any questions or does anyone have anything to ask on that? Okay, all in favor? The motion? Thank you. That's passed unanimously. The next is, there's nothing from engineering, nothing from culture services, nothing from parks and recreation. The next is economic development. The community improvement plan agreement for 535 Dundas Street, 40 Wellington Street, 59 Reeve Street, and 586 Peel Street. Councillor Cioni and Councillor Tate.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Moved by myself, Woodstock City Council approved the community improvement plan application for properties located at 535 Dundas Street, 40 Wellington Street, 59 Reeve Street, and 586 Peel Street, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary agreements, and further that these approved funds be taken from the downtown reserve for these projects.
Thank you. I wonder if Mr. Hammond would like to speak to this request.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So just we have a number of CIP applications here we're dealing with. We accumulated a bit of a backlog just due to issues with getting a meeting together, but they're all great applications, I think, and meet the intent of our community improvement plan, either improving the facades of businesses and buildings along Dundas Street or creating more residential units. in and around the downtown. Some of the additional units are kind of ones and twos. Some of them are bigger, but on whole, they all add up to more people living in and around the downtown, which I think is key to reinvigorating our core.
Thank you, Brad. Are there any questions for Mr. Hammond? Thank you. I think anything that we can do in the downtown is really a plus. So thank you for that report. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next is the clerks, nothing, chief administration, nothing, human resources, nothing, fire service, and the public works. The resolution there, Councillor Tate and Councillor Accioni.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council award the tender for the purchase of one 2022 diesel four-wheel drive 14-foot rotary mower from GC Duke Equipment Limited.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. The next one is a special committee and advisory task force report from the Woodstock Art Gallery Fund Investment Policy. Councillor Talbot and Councillor Schadenberg. Go ahead, Councillor Talbot.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the changes to Council Policy CS014, Woodstock Art Gallery Fund Investment Policy as outlined in the report.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that? Hearing none. All in favor of the report? Thank you. That's all unanimous. And we don't have a notice motion, no new business, no draft bylaws. So we'll proceed with questions and answers of the members of council. So I'll start as in the order I see on the screen. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you. I guess start off with this afternoon, of course, at 4 o'clock. Many of us are going to be able to go down to Museum Square for the Ukrainian flag. Just want to send support out, of course. It's tragic what's happening over there, in my opinion, but if you're wanting to help, you can go to cityofwoodstock.ca to get a list of items that are available. Drop them off to the Reeves Community Center, Southside Aquatic Center, Cowan Sports Black, or Woodstock Museum, but they are asking that everything is turned in by 5 o'clock on Saturday in order to get everything out. So please take a note of that support, and just hopefully this can be over, and hope everybody is staying healthy and safe, and don't think you get rid of your winter tires yet, though it's going to be a warm weekend, I'm told, on Sunday, but it's getting cold again. So keep them on and we'll get through all this. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to comment on an event that happened last weekend, the coldest night of the year, raised over $208,000. To assist those experiencing homelessness. The team that I had donated to came out second out of 67 teams, and they happened to raise $14,190. And actually the individual that I did, he was 7th in fundraising out of 401 walkers. So I mean, it was, and then Woodstock itself was 4th in Canada. And I mean, we were up against Kitchener, Surrey, BC, and Collingwood. Now, I think I was told the other day we dropped a rank because this actually goes to the end of March. But one thing I've always said about our community, it's very generous. And compared to the numbers last year, this year was an outstanding success. And had the opportunity to revisit the inn again for the second time this year. To see the changes that have been made, and it is so positive, and to listen to what is being planned for the future. I think that things will turn around as far as assisting those less fortunate. And one of the things that was brought to our attention is that not everybody that uses the inn is homeless. There is actually people there that have a job, but can't afford to pay rent, especially if you are making like a minimum wage today. So I hope the community remembers that and continues to donate. And just wanted to comment about the flag raising today at 4 p.m. today. It's a terrible situation for those people. And I've already received calls from community members wanting to donate. And even though it has to be done by this week, I think that there's lots of people out there that want to help the situation. So let's do that. And hopefully the conflict will be over quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
Yeah, just want to comment too on that the coldest night of the year. I've always said too that Woodstock and Oxford County is extremely generous. Very impressed with the amount of money that was raised. I think all of us donated to the same team this year. He does a great job. I ended up getting tagged twice because another group, but that was fine. It's well worth it. And just on a personal note with the war in Ukraine, my son's girlfriend is in Poland at med school, and it's been very difficult for everybody, as everyone's well aware. She has been donating all her spare time to triage and giving out food. It's very sad over there. They're right on the border. So I want to give a shout out to her because I'm very proud of the work she's done. It's exhausting. They're all very stressed over there. She is from Woodstock. Her family is here. We ended up, our family donated directly to her so she can give right to the family. So if you know anybody in the community that has family over there and then you bypass any problems that you might have, it's well worth it. And look forward to seeing everybody at 4 o'clock. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, thanks a lot. At the national flower of Ontario is the trillium. The national flower of the Ukraine is the sunflower. And so I'm wearing my sunflower tie today in remembrance of that for the 4 p.m. flag raising ceremony. Do want to mention that the Lions Club of Woodstock, we talk about on again, off again for pandemic restrictions. The Lions Club of Woodstock bingo returns tonight at the Southgate Center. It hasn't been held since I think the third week of December. So the doors open at 5:30 and bingo starts at 7 p.m. So it's glad to see that fundraising event has returned. I'm one of those people that always likes to follow what's going on at the Theatre Woodstock. So naturally they're trying to get plays and stuff going in the schedule, going, and of course youth programming for the summer, etc. But they do actually have a show going on coming up on Saturday, April the 9th at 8 p.m. It's a band called Rant Maggie Rant. They come in from Stratford. Tickets are $35 each, but for more information on what's going on at it's theatrewoodstock.com is the website. And one other thing I wanted to mention, and that's the Woodstock Museum National Historic Site has a display going on right now, or an exhibit, temporary exhibit at the village that straddled the swamp. It's a recognition of 25 years since the Doug Simons book was originally released. Unfortunately, he passed away earlier this calendar year. The exhibit's continuing now until May 28th, so it's a great opportunity to go in and see some of the. One thing that was great about the book, it not only is a solid history of the city of Woodstock, but there's certainly some quirky things inserted in the book as well about interesting tidbits and facts about the city, and I'm sure some of it will be captured at the museum exhibit, which continues until May 28th. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I've been speaking with the Director of Public Works, Mr. Locke. Of course, I know a lot of people are upset about the potholes. He has informed me staff will be permanently repairing the potholes when the asphalt plant opens in order to get the hot asphalt. Presently, they continue to do the cold patching. The fluctuation of weather, freezing and thawing cycles do play havoc with our streets. We do have staff patrolling our streets several times daily, and staff do know where the majority of potholes are. However, if you feel the need to report a pothole, you are more than welcome to do so by calling 519-539-2382, extension 3104. That's not my extension, so go ahead and they'll look after that. And I just want to let you know that on March the 23rd at 11 a.m., there's a fundraising kickoff at Southgate. for their proposed addition to their building. So everyone is welcome to come down and join in to that kickoff. And yes, I will see, as been reported, 4 o'clock is when they'll be raising the Ukrainian flag in support of Ukraine. Mr. Ivan Jarotsky, retired political science professor at the University of Waterloo, will provide an overview of the current situation. The public are invited to attend to learn more about this devastating predicament. So hope to see you there, and thank you. And a call for an adjournment. Councillor Accioni and Councillor Tate.